Welcome to Legends and Lore. I'm D.L. Walker, and I'm going to be taking you on a journey through some of the most iconic urban legends, myths, ghost stories, and conspiracy theories that have helped shape our history. So join me tonight as we discuss a human being considered so vile, he was once called the wickedest man on earth. I'm talking about Aleister Crowley. To totally dive into the legend of Aleister Crowley would quite frankly take hours, possibly days. So, I'm going to be touching on key points of his life, his upbringing, his education, his talents, his religious beliefs, the magic he performed, and his legacy. So, who was Aleister Crowley? Let's find out. Aleister Crowley was born Edward Alexander Crowley on December 12th, 1875. He was born into a well-off, wealthy family. His father was a distillery magnate, and they, quite frankly, were very privileged. Edward, later to be known as Aleister, was educated at some of the finest schools, including Cambridge University. As a young man, he was very personable. He was talkative, and he had an aptitude for literature and art. As Aleister Crowley got into his early 20s, he got wanderlust. He wanted to see the world. He wanted to see what was out there. He joined several mountain climbing expeditions. He even climbed K2. He spent time in Nepal and Tibet, and he had quite an illustrious mountain climbing career for about 5 to 6 years. And then he decided to throw his thoughts and his energies elsewhere. He married Rose Kelly. Rose Kelly and Aleister Crowley honeymooned in Cairo, Egypt. And it was on this honeymoon that he wrote the iconic text to the religion of Thelema, the whole of the law. Now, Aleister Crowley claimed that the whole of the law was dictated to him over several weeks in Cairo, Egypt, by a supernatural being named Aiwass. Some people claim that it was probably a fever dream due to drug use, and others claim that it could have been simply nightmares that he wrote down. Whatever the truth is, the whole of the law has absolutely become one of the most iconic occult manuscripts ever produced. Throughout his career and his life, Aleister Crowley was a member of several religious secret societies. He was a member of the Ordo Templi Orientis and the Hermetic Golden Dawn. Now, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn was more occult based than the Ordo Templi Orientis, and Aleister really, he was more in tune with the darker stuff, and at one point he tried to take over the Ordo Templi Orientis, and he met with some resistance, as you can imagine. But people, they gravitated towards him. They gravitated towards him. He had charisma. Quite frankly, he had all of the attributes that you would expect from a cult leader. He founded Thelema under the express rule of do as thou will. Do as thou will be the whole of the law, which basically meant that Aleister Crowley's mantra was do what you like. If you have a sexual fetish, chase that fetish. If you have a penchant for drugs and alcohol, enjoy it. He was very, very big into what he called sex magic. He would perform rituals with men, women. He was bisexual in nature, and he was, by all accounts, a pretty heavy drug addict. He was a heroin addict and an opium addict. Now, to go back a little bit into his legacy, during World War I, Aleister Crowley spent quite a bit of time in the United States. He spent time in the United States and he campaigned against Britain in the war. He championed the German side in World War I. But it turns out that he was actually an Allied spy. Pretty interesting. During World War II, he kept circles with a lot of the counterintelligence community. Some say that he was an Allied spy during World War II as well. That has not been proven. But the government did find use for him. That is, until his belief systems got out into the public. Once people started to find out what he was about and what he was doing and the magic that he was trying to practice, he was labeled a Satanist. He was labeled evil. He was labeled the wickedest man on earth. Now, by all accounts, Aleister Crowley would tell you to himself, I can't be a Satanist because I do not believe in Christ and I do not believe in the devil. So that kind of knocks the Satanism angle out of the water. But he did perform rituals that were considered dark and disturbing. As a matter of fact, there was some rumor that he was actually sacrificing children. Well, he didn't help his case much when, during an interview, somebody asked him if he sacrificed kids, and he said, I sacrifice usually around 150 to 200 babies every year. Unfortunately, they didn't get the joke that this was a tongue-in-cheek reference to ejaculation. So the press kind of ran with it. And so with these bad articles being written about him and everything, he decided to label himself the Great Beast 666. Now, another interesting fact about Crowley's life was that he was bisexual. He was with men and women. He preferred women, and some reports say that he had up to 300 to 400 female lovers in his lifetime that he kept as scarlet women, as he would call them. And they would perform sex magic. And they would eat these things called cakes of light, which were basically biscuits that were baked with menstrual blood or semen. Very disturbing, odd stuff. He moved to Italy for a while, and he formed the Thelema Abbey, which was a complex where he could perform his magic with his followers. And unfortunately, the Italian government caught wind of everything he was doing in there, and they kicked him out of Italy. They kicked him out of Italy, and they literally banned him for life. Now, whether he ever returned is not known, but he did have a lifetime ban, especially in the city of Cefalù, where the abbey stood. And the abbey still stands today. And if you go in there, there are all sorts of weird, interesting carvings and paintings on the wall from Aleister Crowley and his followers. I highly suggest that you go look at some of the YouTube videos about Thelema Abbey. It's quite fascinating. Aleister Crowley decided that he was going to move to Scotland. So, he moved to an area of Scotland on the banks of Loch Ness. Yes, of Loch Ness Monster fame. He bought a house called Boleskine House. And in this house, he spent 6 months trying to perform a dark ritual to summon the demon Chernazon. Now, some people say that he actually was able to summon Chernazon. Some people say that the ritual was interrupted and broken. Either way, it's a lot of dark things that were going on in Boleskine House. And fun fact, Boleskine House was later bought in 1970 by Jimmy Page, guitar player with Led Zeppelin, who was also a big believer in the occult, and some say followed Thelema. Aleister Crowley was married 3 times, and he had 5 children, 4 of which died in infancy. This affected him very little, quite frankly. He was not a family man, and nor did he care to be one. As he got older, his addictions got a little more prominent. He started injecting heroin and morphine and doing a lot of cocaine. He had 3 different nasal surgeries to fix a collapsed septum. Everything up in here just disintegrated. He developed asthma and pleurisy, and he was not in the greatest of health. He was a lifelong smoker, and that didn't help either. His later years were spent in a boarding house, quite frankly. This man who was once considered a visionary in the occult world, and who had popular books written, who had written popular books, who had painted marvelous pictures, and wrote beautiful poetry, was reduced to living in a boarding house addicted to heroin. Aleister Crowley, when he died on December 1st, 1947. And when he died, Thelema kind of died with him. There are still people who practice the religion that Crowley founded, but they're few and far between. Aleister Crowley went from one of the most well-known figures on Earth to being reduced to a drug addict in a halfway house, basically. And when he died, his ashes were given to a close friend, and they were brought to Hampton, New Jersey, where they were buried in his friend's garden. What is the legacy here? Is the legacy, that he was evil? Is the legacy that he was considered the wickedest man on earth? Or can we look deeper and see the legacy as being he was a hell of a writer, a hell of a poet, and a damn fine artist? I don't know. I am fascinated with Aleister Crowley and his persona. Always have been. But I do believe he was an evil person. I believe that he was the embodiment of human evil on earth. Some may agree, some may disagree. That's y'all's choice to believe and think how you like about the subject, but I believe he was evil. And I think that the world should study people like this. Really study their minds, their works. I have a couple of books about Aleister Crowley, not because I follow anything that he believed, but because I have a thirst to find out what made this man tick. It's no different than people who are really into serial killers. I know people that just absolutely are fascinated with anything having to do with certain serial killers. And this is kind of the same with me. Aleister Crowley was, in my opinion, a tragic figure in history, a dark figure, an evil figure, and one that, quite frankly, people should study and learn from. Now, I know I haven't really touched on everything that I could have, but I'd like everybody that's interested to do the research. Look into this persona of the wickedest man on earth, the man who called himself the Great Beast 666. And you will find so many interesting side stories that it's hard to fathom or comprehend that this man could have done so much in his 72 years of living. And a lot of it done from his early 20s to his 40s. Mountain climbing, art, publishing books, having books written about him. Do yourself a favor. If this subject interests you at all, do the research. Might open your mind, and it might give you an idea of what makes somebody like this tick. Aleister Crowley, the wickedest man on earth? I believe so.